As Rokudan is a dan mono, the first two sections started out were very slow and deliberate. This third dan is where we begin to pick up the tempo in a more marked way. So I've spoken about in earlier videos about how these classical pieces, we can feel 2 pulses per box. Probably at the beginning of sandan, we still feel the 2 pulses, but gradually we get to a point where we feel just a single pulse per box. We start out here with 2 pulses, then the sa-ra-rin. The sa-ra-rin is composed of 3 elements. This tremolo, I'm holding on with my pinky here. Not everyone does that, but sa-ra-rin is this, and then the next element is ura-ren, this moving down the strings with the backs of your picks. Well, just kind of moving your fingers a little bit like this back and forth, and then switching over to the thumb. So it's 3 elements, this, and then followed by this, and then the thumb. Let's try. Here we go, again in tempo as we're about 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got a couple presses. These are low presses. We need to be very much prepared for them. We've got the 6 and then we've got the 4. So I'd like to think about where we're going to be releasing those carefully. So shan, the 6 press here, release after you play the 7, and then move right down to the 4, and then release the 4 after you played the 5 above it. One more time, and 2 pulses here till maybe. Gradually, maybe here just start to feel a single pulse. And moving a little bit faster. One beat. Again, faster. Okay, right at this point, we've picked up this tempo. We're at a good pace with feeling one pulse per box. Here, you can see next to the king, next to the 13, there's a character, and this means to raise that pitch. We need to press it to raise the pitch 1.5 steps. With our instruments now, they're very tightly strung, and it's basically impossible to do that. What I do is I raise the pitch. I actually move the bridge. I've made a mark here, but I move the bridge up 1 whole step, and that way I only need to do a half press, a yoaoshi here. There's a yoaoshi on the 12 as well, and so and there's an indication, a bracket there, and that means that this is a kakeoshi. That means that you need to press these, do both of these presses, do them at the same time. It's a little bit awkward and takes some getting used to. The upper string you'll be pressing with your thumb and your 4th finger. The lower string you'll be pressing with your 2nd and 3rd fingers. So when we get to that 7, 12, then we need to quickly move the 13 back down, and for that next 13 on an open 13 string. We'll move the bridge up in the previous line after we've had 11 press. Once that sound dies off, we'll quickly make the move here while we're doing the 2, 7, 5, 10. I'll play it for you now so you can see how it works. Okay, here you see a little koto-rin, and the koto-rin could be played. We often play this by a little bit more rhythmically, so instead of, we break it into two, and it's a little bit easier to play this way as well, cleaner. The first is the top two notes together, and then kind of the toe is separately. So if we're playing, I'll play that. This last line, there's a lot, it's moving quite quickly now. We've moved up to this pace where we've got just one pulse per box. That last line, just be careful with the 9 press there. It's a quick press and release because you'll be releasing it just as you play the 8. So you're not pressing it for very long. So there are a couple new elements. There's the kakeoshi, there's the sararin, a couple things to be careful. But the main thing and focus for this third dan, I think, is picking up the tempo. By the time we've arrived at yodan, the 4th section here, the tempo has increased quite a bit, and a lot of that happened during the third dan. Most people would gradually pick up the tempo even more here through the 4th and 5th dan. For our purposes, I'll keep it at the same tempo that I ended the third dan with. And I think I'll start by playing the first 2 lines of yodan. Gradually, as the tempo increases, there are certain things that might change a little bit with your playing. At the beginning in Ichidan and Nidan, I was very clear about playing strongly and firmly, and we want to keep that in mind because that really doesn't change. But some of these figures are a little bit more difficult. For example, it's more difficult to continue to play the shan or the sha-sha down into the strings like this. And as the tempo increases, it becomes more, it's a little bit more fitting to the mood of the piece, and also physically it becomes almost impossible at very quick tempos to play firmly down all the way into the string. One thing that you want to keep in mind is that we still need to feel a certain gravity or weight to that. And we do not want to lose that. And in order to keep that, I suggest that you focus on the same kind of movement with your hand that you had when we played down into the strings. But instead of playing down, slightly bend your finger as you play. And that allows you to keep the weight, but also to move more quickly to the next note or to the next passage. So for example, and here again. Okay, this last one, ko-ko-do-ding-dan. Now this final shan at the end of line 2, I like to play down into the string there personally, and often it's a personal choice. You will listen to different people and how they play and watch them, and you can get ideas about that, and also your teacher will be able to help you to make decisions about what's going to work best for you. Let's look at lines 3 and the beginning of line 4 a little bit here. This is kind of a long phrase here, and I'll play through it first and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so the phrase, I haven't spoken so much about phrasing yet, and I feel that phrasing comes naturally the more you play the piece. If you play it repeatedly and practice regularly, you'll begin to feel kind of naturally where your hand. It often involves the movement of your hand on the koto. It could begin or end with a shan. Often it could begin with a middle finger on a, that kind of thing could signify kind of the beginning of an idea. This is definitely the beginning of an idea at the top of line 3. That's probably the end of that little piece there that you could call that a phrase. And then we have a short, that's probably the next one. And then the following phrase would begin with the 5, 5, 10. It might seem a little bit confusing, especially if you're used to Western music, how phrases basically often follow bar lines, and it's very easy to see things. For example, here at the end of line 3 and the beginning of line 4, there are rests in between, so you might feel that things are not so connected, but actually they are. The 9, this phrase with 9, 9, 10, da, 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 then we start again with the next phrase here. So, 9, da, da, the next phrase. This continues through to here, then the next phrase here. So remember, just feel like, although there are rests there, that the sound and that the notes are connected. Bottom of line 4. Begin again here. Beginning here, right? So we've got from line 5 there at the top, and with the next phrase on the beginning with the 8. Beginning here. Okay, we've got a couple things happening here. Kororin from the bottom of line 5. The more the tempo increases, the easier it is to kind of fluff over this, to not play it quite as clearly. We want to make sure that even though the tempo is increasing, that you hear this kororin very clearly. Be careful about that. Also, the ato oshi, the after press. Often in the classical repertoire, in pieces like Rokudan, you will hear them playing that almost in a slightly delayed. It might sound more relaxed to you. They're doing the actual press more slowly. The release is still very clear on the string following that, the string below, one string below. So do, do, do. For our purposes, let's keep it straight. I think it's important for you to get an idea of doing the press pressing enough, right, to the full press, and also coming and releasing on that next string, okay? But you'll hear different things. Listen carefully, talk to your teacher, and figure out what's going to be best for yourself. This little figure here, I suggest that you keep it as before. Think of it in 2 pieces, this and okay? So the 13 and the 12 together, and then the 11, even at faster tempos. It's quite nice. One last thing. At the bottom of the second to the last line, it's probably written in your score, oha, oshi hanashi. Depending on the player, personally, I like to do it that way without doing the hanashi. Again, this is a choice, a personal choice, personal taste. You may do it. So a lot of these things are not set in stone, and depending upon the player or the school, people will be playing it differently. That's how I do it. You'll note that Godan, the fifth section, begins right away with a 4 press there in the first measure, and it also occurs in the third measure. Once you've pressed that, you're going to want to keep that pressed and stay down at that end of the koto. Because it's quite a bit of effort to get down here for this, you really need to be thinking about this at the end of the 4th dan. So I'd like to play from the end of the 4th dan, the last figure there at the end of the 4th dan, and move into the 5th dan for you. Now, it is quite a distance down here. I'm a rather big person, so it's easy for me to reach that. You may need to get up on your knees. You may need to stand up a little bit in order to get down here. And depending on how tightly your strings are strung, that could also, if they're very tight, that could also be a factor. Once you're down here, you're going to need to stay down here. It's perfectly fine. Your body's moved this way for your right hand to come out from the ryukaku a little bit so that you're out here. And things look a little bit differently out here, so you need to get used to that. So just take your time. Down, down. Come up to the 8. And then move yourself gradually back to the ryukaku. Going on to line 2. Yo, I. Yo, I. Be careful here. It's just important to feel this. My score has yo, I written in there, and that's very common to help us keep the time. But really feel strongly those 2 beats. So, sha, sha, ten, sha, sha, ten. I feel this 9, 9, 8, 9 is a very beautiful little piece of melody here. It's different from the material that's come before that. We've had all these sha-sha 10, we had the sha-sha ko, do, di, ending there, then 9, feel like you're starting here. Maybe not quite as strong, just a little bit a sweet kind of feeling to it. 9, 9, 9. We start again here, okay? You might note the more you become familiar with this and the more you listen to it, you'll hear this ascending line, which is really quite beautiful, and it ties this whole section together from the top of, line 4, 6, 7, 8, then the 9 press, then the 10s, and this next phrase starts with the 5, and we still have the 10 up here, so, and even going up higher, moving higher and higher, finally up to the 13 press. So, I think, you don't need to make too much of it, but it's nice to kind of be aware, and I think it will help you to tie this all together, to be aware of that rising line and the feel of the melody rising up all the way up to the 13 and then kind of descending back down and finally ending with, this is a little bit tricky at the end, okay? I would say, the ato oshi, don't let that interfere with the rhythm. So you might practice at the beginning just straight, da da dun dun dun, like that, and then it becomes, because the tempo is quite fast, it becomes a very quick ato oshi, and of course we're moving to the string below that, so we release it right away. Rokudan, the 6th section, begins at the same tempo that we ended the 5th dan with, and normally it would be quite a good clip. I'll play it at our set tempo. just like to talk a little bit about the hiki-ito in measure 3. We have the sha-sha-ten. Okay, it's a pull. Make sure that you think of that. This is very rhythmical. So sha-sha-ten, pull, release. Sha-sha-ten, pull, release. So on the rest is where you will be releasing that, the pull. We've got the 4 press. You really need to be ready for that. So you've got the pulls here. As soon as you're done with the pulls, you're going to come down here. Okay. The next section is going to be lighter with, you're going to be lifting these shun because we're at a good tempo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, here the 10 full press and you'll note the 11 half press are the same pitch. So you're going to want to be listening carefully for that. So be careful, you can't release this until just as you play the 10. So release here, then press. Then we've got the shu, the chidashi zume down there. This requires some practice because it is at quite a good tempo, and also the 11 press, you need to keep it held down. Don't release it, just keep it held down through all of that. Until here, until that 10, and that's where you're going to release it. Slow, bing, da, da, dum. Okay, this is the case with all dan mono, this type of piece, that they start out, as we've spoken before, they start out very kind of slowly and deliberately at the beginning. Gradually they build speed, and at the end they slow down again. When I was taught this originally, I was told it's a gradual slowing down of things. But the more I've experienced it, the more I've worked on it, listened to people, I've come to understand that it's more kind of a matter of applying the brakes at certain points in the ending here. There's just certain places where it's easier to feel a weight that's going to slow you down, a heaviness. So, for example, I'll start from the bottom of line 4. Probably this is one of the first places where you feel it, those 2 beats, those 2 rests in there. So, sha-sha-ten, wait, sha-sha-ten, even more than. Then you probably keep basically the same tempo here. Then this is the next place where you're going to be doing that, feeling that with the ato oshi. It's often a press, sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's an ato oshi where we feel this weightedness, this heaviness. So, bum ba bum 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 ba bum tsu un diang diang diang. Okay, this is called, we say dan. It's when you play across 2 strings with your thumb like this. It's kind of like a reverse shan. So, okay, and this is with the press. So I have an ato oshi on 12. There's a little U there, and that's yuri-ito. So what that's doing is, on the beat, it's releasing and pressing again. Okay, so we've got the full press, and feeling even more weight here. By the time we get to this 11, we're back to 2 pulses per box. And this is another place where we're feeling the weight here. So feeling again with the dian, so with the tsu un, with this ato oshi tsu un dian, and more heaviness here with that full press. Then we're at this slower tempo now. And 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and I'll play from the end of the fourth line, just so you can hear how this all fits together. At some point there, probably second to last line, after we finished with the Dian and this Yudi Ito, we start feeling very clearly 2 pulses per box as opposed to 1. So I'll start, here we go, bottom of line 4. Weighted here and more or here. More here. Thank you for watching. Rokudan is the most important classical piece for solo koto. Players learn it early and they polish it their entire lives. Go back to it frequently, listen to others, and enjoy it as it becomes your own.